Hello, and welcome to STEAM of Consciousness, a program presented by the ARI Podcasting Network and hosted by George Koperna. What is STEAM? STEAM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Art, and Mathematics. During each episode, we will take a few minutes to sit down with professionals in different STEAM-related fields to give them an opportunity to share their story and give their perspectives with the goal of promoting career awareness to potentially interested students, young professionals, and of course, anyone else who shares a fascination with these areas of study. And now, please join us as we tap into the STEAM of Consciousness.
Welcome to STEAM of Consciousness. I'm your host, George Koperna, and today I'm really pleased to have my coworker here, Denise Hills. Welcome, Denise.
Thanks, George. I'm happy to be here.
So today, I've got a list of things. Would you like to hear what I'd like to talk about?
Sure. I'm sure we'll only get to some of them knowing how we talk. So,
Volcanoes, outreach
Okay.
and education, and blue hens, in no particular order.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. All right. What do you want to start with?
So tell me a little bit about what you do for the firm.
So, my title is project manager, which encompasses a whole bunch of things. It involves tracking budgets and making sure we have the right people assigned to the right jobs. But what I really do, what I do the most, I have a technical background, so I do a lot of the technical geoscience work that we do at Advanced Resources International. But often what I do is I translate that technical work into language that can be understood by people who need to understand that, whether that's a regulator or a legislator or the general public. So that tends to be one of the big things that I do here at ARI.
And I think let's parse that out. Let's split the technical with the soft skills side of it initially. And what was your inciting moment? What got you interested in STEAM topics?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I've always been fascinated with the world around me, and I've always loved science and math. Those were my favorite subjects as a kid. And when I learned that, okay, maybe I can make a career out of this, that was really exciting for me. So geoscience and geology in particular, what really got me excited was a program that I was able to be involved in high school, where I got to be outside. We went fossil hunting. We actually did, as a high school student, I was involved in an actual university research project. And so that kind of exposed me to what science really was like. And so that really got me excited. I was like, wow, what a great thing to do. I get to learn more about the world around me, and I get to share about that. That's really what excited me.
So many of our guests have talked about not saying no to opportunities, and that sounds like that was don't say no to an opportunity when you were in high school.
Yeah. It was a summer program. It was a month-long residence program at the College of William and Mary. I didn't even know about it until a couple months before the application. I'd never heard of it. Was called the Governor's School for Science and Technology. And someone said, hey, you should look into doing this. It was like, okay, and kind of applied on a whim and got accepted, and was assigned to the geology program. And that was a big reason why I am where I am today.
And so you took an interest in science and mathematics in high school and said you could have been an engineer and been damaged like me for the rest of your life. But
Hey, some of my favorite people are engineers. My dad was a chemical engineer, so I got to see what he did while I was growing up. So I have high respect for engineers.
And I think you took this coursework, and this was between the year you graduated.
Yeah, it was between my junior and senior year of high school.
Oh, okay. Did that sway your decision at all at where you matriculated to college?
It did. I finished high school in Northern Virginia. And so I was aware of Virginia state schools like William and Mary, but I hadn't really considered it because I've been looking more at big schools like Virginia Tech or UNC Chapel Hill or Duke. But I really felt connected to William and Mary. One of the things I really liked about the school actually was that it was smaller. It actually opened up more research opportunities for me as an undergraduate. I had to do an undergraduate research. Every geology major at William and Mary has to do an undergraduate research project. That is equivalent to many people's master's degrees. And so that to me, I wanted to be doing science, not just taking classes about it.
And so, was that any kind of motivation for you when you began to approach the end of your 4 years at William and Mary to say, did you like the research? Did you want to expand on the research you did? What kind of was the drawing line? Because, not to bury the lead, you ultimately went on to get a master's degree.
I did. I went to University of Delaware to work on a master's degree. So I love teaching. I love talking about my science, and I love sharing my science. And one of the ways that people do that is through academic research and teaching at an academic institution. And so from early on in my undergraduate days, I was like, I think I would love to be a professor at a college like William and Mary, where I get to both teach and do research and get students excited and young adults excited about science. And the path to that is to do a master's degree and then a PhD. And so it made sense for me to continue on and get more specialized knowledge by pursuing a master's degree, which I did at the University of Delaware.
And for those that don't know, the mascot is?
It is a blue hen.
Yeah. And so I knew we were going to talk about it.
Yes.
But
yeah.
That's great, because your passion for talking to people is always shown ever since I've met you.
Yeah.
And as you work through your master's degree and your teaching, did you say, boy, PhD, it's where it's at? Or I want to be a professor? Or what were your career goals as you move through bachelor's to master's, and then you're thinking for the future?
Going on. So I was pretty well set at that point in my life on becoming a university professor, or teaching at a higher level, higher than high school. Community college was also on my radar, and most people who do that have a PhD. So I went into the master's program. Some people go straight to a PhD program from their undergraduate. I tend to, when people ask me for advice and guidance, I tend to suggest that they don't do that. The reason being, the research I did as a master's student is very different than where I ended up. And it was a way for me to kind of test a different type of research that I was doing. I did more environmental near-surface geophysics and hydrology even. And I enjoyed it, but it wasn't really my passion. I didn't really get excited about it, but it was a discrete project. I did great with it. But I wanted to do a different kind of science. And if I had committed myself to a PhD program straight away, that would have been a little bit more difficult. But I did go into the master's program assuming that my next step would be a PhD program. So while I was wrapping up my master's degree, I did start looking at PhD programs that had research programs that more appealed to where I thought I wanted to go. And that was, more deep geophysics, not near surface, not, shallow ground penetrating radar depths, but, reflection seismology and things like that. And so I started looking at PhD programs.
You talked a little bit about your undergraduate research, and how did that lead into the master's? Because you said it was almost like a master's quality piece of work.
Yeah. So I did research on in West Virginia on radioactive sandstones and dating on sandstones, and so that gave me exposure to doing field work, to designing and completing a project, we were essentially given a list of potential topics, and this was the one that appealed to me at the time. And while I don't do a whole lot of sedimentary dating, what it gave me exposure to was kind of the sedimentary stratigraphy that plays into the work that I've done with reflection geophysics, reflection seismology, with looking at the subsurface layers there. So it gave me some skills there, and I could see, like, in the field, oh, that's what this looks like, and oh, that's what this looks like when I look at it on a seismic image. So while it was different, it gave me exposure. And one of the biggest values I found with it was truly the process that I had to go through. Designing the project, completing the field work, collecting the data, analyzing the data, writing it up, and how much longer it takes to write up than you really think it ought to. So having that exposure actually probably positioned me well to get into a master's program, because I'm going to tell you a secret. My undergraduate GPA was not great. It was not a 4.0. It was not. My major GPA, I don't even think was a 3.0. But by demonstrating that I had the research skills, that allowed me to get into a really good master's program.
So a more rounded student moving up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to jump ahead now, because those that are listening can't see, but your backdrop is?
My backdrop is the Halemaumau crater on the Big Island of Hawaii in Volcanoes National Park. And it was in December of 2018 when it started fire filming. It's a photo that I took when I was there on vacation.
And when you were looking for your doctoral program, you ended up going where?
I ended up at the University of Hawaii, which is not, my campus was not on the Big Island, but I did get to spend some time on the Big Island. The University of Hawaii at Manoa is on the main island of Oahu in Honolulu. I went there to work with somebody who was doing marine reflection seismology, marine geophysics on subduction zones off of the Big Island of Hawaii. Well, actually, that's not really a subduction zone, but that's something else we could talk about some other time. But a subduction zone and a subduction zone off of Japan called the Nankai Trough.
Really cool. And you took your undergraduate, we'll call it master's light work, your master's degree, and decided you wanted to be a volcanologist to some degree. And
a little bit, yeah. I mainly worked on subduction zones, but so again, back to that sedimentary geology roots a little bit.
And as you were pursuing your PhD, how did you move through the program? Were you thinking of stepping out into private sector at any time? Were you still enamored with potentially being a professor at a university, college, community college?
I was considering other options at that point too. I still kind of had my sights set on teaching at a university, not necessarily being a 100% research professor, but finding some blend of teaching and research, or more into an applied science view. I worked very closely with some people at Landmark Graphics, which is now, I think, part of Halliburton or something to that effect, with a seismic processing program. So I was helping test out new workflows and things like that. And I really, really enjoyed that sort of testing and tweaking and applying the science I did to very specific problems. So I was still, I wasn't, and I was getting less enamored. The longer I spent in the program, the less enamored I got with the idea of staying in academia. There are challenges in academia, and I love everybody who stays in it, and I respect people who stay in it. But I didn't like not necessarily doing as much applied science. I like, one of the organizations I'm involved with calls solution science versus discovery science. And academics tend to do discovery science, kind of the next cutting thing. And I really like the solutions side. I like being able to apply what we do to problems. And so as I got further into my PhD program, I started to realize that maybe academia wasn't where I wanted to be at that point in my life.
And that's what it's all about, right? Getting enough experiences to inform yourself what your next move should be. And so when you approach graduation, how did you go about casting your opportunity net?
So interestingly enough, I did not graduate from my PhD program. I completed my master's, but I did not complete my PhD. I actually left the PhD program after spending several years in it. Talked with my advisor, talked with my family and friends, and decided that remaining in the program, while I did not regret a single minute I spent in it, and I still use all of the skills I developed in that program, it wasn't the right path for me anymore. It was the right path until it wasn't. And I still remember my advisor, saying, "Yeah, no, you are fully capable of doing this PhD. It's not where you want to be right now, and that's fine." And I still respect the fact I run into my PhD advisor at conferences still, and he still proudly introduces me as one of his graduate students. So even though I didn't finish the program, I'm not a failure. I just chose a different path.
And where did that path take you?
So the first thing that I started to do when I left the PhD program is I started working at museums as a science educator. So I took that love of talking about science and getting excited about real research and communicating that to the broader public. One of the first programs that I was involved with at Bishop Museum in Honolulu was, there are researchers at museums, and they do really great, interesting stuff. So we took what they did at the museum and developed like a comparable program that middle school students could participate in, so they could essentially mirror the type of research that these museum scientists were doing on a daily basis, and getting to make those connections between the current researchers and students who are still learning and getting excited about scientists, and seeing what a scientist looks like and what they actually do really was very exciting and very inspiring. Something I very much enjoyed doing, and I still try to take that attitude to a lot of the things I do today.
And after some time, let's jump ahead. You started to look for other permanent employment.
I did. While I love working at museums, I'll be blunt, it's not always the most lucrative, as well as where I ended up living at the time with small children. There wasn't a museum very close to me that could provide me employment. However, I was really lucky that the Geological Survey of Alabama was located where I was living at the time, and they were looking to hire someone with a geoscience background. So I was able to get back into a little bit more technical of a role.
And that was bringing the geosciences almost full circle again.
Right.
And I think your love for outreach, you talked about, I love to talk about technical stuff, and
Yeah.
there's a place where that blossomed even further.
Yes. Yeah. So one of the great things about working for a state geologic survey is part of the mission of a state geologic survey is to make information available to the public. And so part of my job had to be to get the science that we were doing out, and not just out at professional conferences, but to people who live and work in the state, so they can have the information in ways to make decisions that impact their day-to-day life. And so that to me was really a way to make those connections. You know, and it became, the more time I spent doing this, the more I started to recognize not everybody can do it well. Um, you know, George, I love my engineers, but often they're not the best ones to be out talking at a public meeting about what a project actually means to somebody's property, because they'll get a little bit too into the weeds. But so after working for the survey for many years, I started talking. We'd worked together on projects when I was at the survey, starting to realize that maybe we could expand how I do that sort of outreach and engagement and communication into an even bigger part of my role professionally.
And I think let's pin that. And when you start to talk about building it out professionally, you also started engaging with a lot of professional societies
I
and
did.
doing similar activities through there. Care
Yes.
to elaborate on that?
Yes, the role of professional societies in my professional development cannot be understated. I've been given opportunities, and again, it's saying yes to the opportunities sometimes. Probably one of the biggest ones was the American Geophysical Union had started a program called Voices for Science back in about 2018 or so. And this program was a year-long program where HEU professional staff would help support scientists and researchers to develop their skills with science communication and science policy. So, the types of activities we did: hill visits. We visited with our state representatives, our federally elected representatives. We did local government outreach. I would meet with state legislators, have community meetings, attend community meetings, speak at Rotary clubs, and they helped me develop my skills on that and build connections to be more effective in that space. So, that's an opportunity I wouldn't have gotten if I hadn't been part of that particular professional society.
And one of the things that's near and dear to my heart is your when you gave the presentations where you could only use 100 words,
Oh,
most
yes.
common words. And
yes. So yes, I love that talk. Those talks that I've done. AGU and some other professional societies have sometimes done a session called Upgoer 5. There's a web comic by a gentleman named Randall Munroe. He used to work for the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And he decided one day to try and describe the Saturn V rocket using the 1,000 most common US English words. And it's 1,000, not 1,000, because 1,000 wasn't one of those words. And so that's what the Saturn V rocket became, the Upgoer 5. And so that's the origin of that name. And so my first one of those that I gave a talk on geologic carbon storage under the Gulf of Mexico, and the potential for it, whether it was going to be good, good potential storage, and figuring out how to communicate with that very restrictive language. First off, gives you a lot of respect for anybody who's giving a talk in their non-native language, because it has to be so tightly scripted. But it also made you think of things in different ways. Is that actually a good way to communicate? Probably not, but is it a good way to reframe your thinking about how you communicate? Yeah, it's great. And it is an absolute hoot. Hearing people talking, like ocean isn't one of the words, so it's called the big blue water. And so it was wonderful. It was so much fun, and I really enjoyed doing that kind of thing.
And the thing I found so interesting about it is it gave you a basic language to communicate to other people that we're trying to communicate in the same language. So that's no different than reaching out to the public at large, your peers, or students.
Yeah, finding that commonality, that common language, that common viewpoint is one of the best ways to start to establish trust between people, and make people a little bit more willing to listen to you, even if they end up disagreeing with what you're telling them. But they might be a little bit more open to willing to listen to you if you find that commonality, whether it's commonality in language or place or other things like that.
And, based on the introduction, we're colleagues, we work together. So at some point, we were able to lure you away from SEC football, which is Southeast Conference,
Yeah.
in the University of Alabama.
Yes.
So we still apologize for that. But and for us, you're doing a lot of those same things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, as you communicate with the public at large and engage with professionals and sometimes young persons, we've had outreach engagements. I mean, how have you seen that evolve over the last few years? Has there been any evolution? Is it very similar? Or the foundations shifting a little bit?
The foundations of the communications itself are fairly similar. It's like that identifying the common ground, finding ways to make the connections with people, bringing your humanity when you're talking about your science, because so many people don't know any scientists, don't really recognize that we're people too. So that is the same. But one of the things that really got me really fired up about embracing this pathway a little bit more is I have seen in my lifetime like a public erosion in the trust of science. That do your own research is a common thing, but how do you evaluate that research? And so that's something that I spend time talking with people about. It's like, how do you evaluate whether or not, just because it's on the internet doesn't make it true. Just because it was on a documentary on TV doesn't make it true. How do you evaluate this? How do you, build trust? So that's more what I've seen. I see my work more, maybe a little bit less about actually communicating the science, but more about building trust and building relationships. One of the other really big shifts I've seen in the past few years is often, you still see this sometimes, that scientists and companies maybe don't want to share what they're doing directly because they're afraid of the competition. They're afraid somebody's going to scoop them. Somebody is going to get ahead of them. That is a great way to build distrust with the places that these research activities are happening, because people are like, well, why are you hiding this? Why are you not telling me what's going on? But I've seen a big shift where people in academia, people at private companies are becoming more willing to talk, at least maybe not specifically about the very specific project that they're working on, but much more broadly about what they're doing and why they're doing it and how it may impact the community. I'm starting to see that shift because I've seen, which is very positive to me. I've seen more projects in the past 5 to 10 years fail due to kind of that soft side of things than the technical side of things, where a community comes out against a project, and that plays a big role in whether or not that project is going to move forward. So that trust building is as big a role now as the actual science communication side of things, I think.
And I'm glad you hit on trust. And I would have phrased it the same way, I think, but maybe not as eloquently. And as I put on my technology hat and I'm there, so often as we build these projects, public opinion is colored by the projects that happened before us.
Right.
And so as open and as trusting as we can be with the public, sometimes you don't get that reciprocated back. And Have you had to wrestle with any of that at all, or at least witness any of that?
Oh, certainly, certainly, certainly. And sometimes you reach a point where you may not get agreement. That maybe you can at least have respect for each other's opinion. I was just recently at a public event um, about carbon capture projects in a part of Louisiana. And there was somebody who was a local elected official who came to the event very, very against CCS and left saying, I'm not for it, but I'm not going to stand against you now. And sometimes that's the best you can hope, because there's a reason that he distrusted it, because he's had experience with other projects, like you said. His experience with past projects was not positive, but we were able to build some of that trust by being open and transparent and answering his questions and telling him like some of the safety measures that have been put in place since those other projects, or addressing his concerns. Some of the bigger issues can be when people are afraid about something that actually your project may not even touch. Somebody might be like, well, my air quality is going to be absolutely terrible by you doing XYZ. You're like, well, we're actually not releasing anything into the air. So not really, but you have these concerns. How might we connect you to somebody who could help address those? So that's all part of that trust building. But that trust in science has been eroded so badly that it can be an uphill battle. But I have faith in people, because people, whenever I interact with people, people are curious. They have questions. They want the answers. They want people. They want to understand. We want to understand the world around us. So.
I don't disagree, and that's why whenever I talk about outreach, I try to include an education afterwards, because I think the more we talk about what we're doing, and sometimes we use very long, elaborate words for very simple things, and
Yeah.
it's a problem. But you not only have to educate the community for which you're doing the project, why you're doing it, how you're doing it, what the benefits could be for that community. One of the ways that I know you and I have tried to engage is with students.
Yes.
The expression "start when they're young," kind of, not to be
Right.
a little bit playful here, but
It,
um,
no,
try to reach out and bring people out to see the things that we're doing.
yes.
Students in college, we haven't quite dipped into high school, but we have plans to do that at some point. Um, can you care to elaborate on that, and how that engagement could benefit?
For sure. Yeah, I love working with high school students, with college students, middle school students. Sometimes the younger they are, the more excited they are about actual science. Sometimes they get a little jaded the older they get, because you know. Um, but it's such a wonderful experience when you go. I'm a geologist, right? I was a geology major. I was one of the few people who started college knowing I was going to be a geology major, because most people don't even know about it. Most of my graduating class for my bachelor's degree did not start out as geology majors, but when they got exposed to it, all of a sudden it opened all these doors. And that's what I see when we're doing, the student education, is that we're not trying to convert everybody to working in geoscience or in carbon capture and storage. We're just exposing people to possibilities, and that experiential learning, that seeing it happen in the field, even if they end up being more on that discovery science side of things later, seeing how it plays out in the day to day really can make an impact on a student and really help change their trajectory, or at least change their perspective and understand why the science that we're doing is important or can affect their lives.
And I have this strong memory of we 2 years ago had a field trip where we brought people out from a local university to see a drill rig set up, show them rock samples that were collected from a mile down. And I think it opens people's eyes. And I couldn't agree more with you. And I know we're running to the end of time. So if I could be so bold as to ask you, what's the piece of advice you might have for somebody if you were talking to yourself, perhaps when you were in high school, what advice might you provide to yourself that could be translated to a young person today?
Wow. There's a couple different things. Say yes to opportunities, but don't be afraid to change your course. Because the path you take to get where you are makes who you are, but that doesn't mean that you're locked into a particular path. I could have stayed locked in and gone the academic route, but I would not have been as happy. I would have been successful, I have no doubt, but I wouldn't be as happy with where my life is. And I wouldn't have gotten to meet people like you, George, if I'd actually stayed in academia. But I said yes to opportunities that I might not have, that I was hesitant to say yes to. The summer experience between my junior and senior year of high school, the opportunity to do a field program as an undergraduate, moving halfway around the world to work on a PhD project, saying yes to working in a museum instead of staying in a PhD program. These are all things I said yes to that I might have hesitated about. But also, I said yes to go to a PhD program and then realized that that was not where I needed to remain. So say yes, but be adaptable.
That's a tremendous piece of advice. And I'd like to thank you for your time today. And again,
always a pleasure chatting with you, George.
This has been STEAM of Consciousness. I'd like to again thank Denise Hills, my colleague, and Ryan Kessler for producing this podcast. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to listen to new episodes of STEAM of Consciousness, available on your preferred podcast listening station.